Pedro grew up mostly homeless in his younger days. He often saw violence and was also sexually abused. Lopez was born on October 8, 1948, in Santa Isabel, Colombia. His father, who was a political figure in Colombia named Medardo Reyes, was killed. Pedro's mom was 3 months pregnant at the time of the killing. Pedro, according to many reports, was the seventh child among 13 siblings. He was often described as a polite boy in his younger days and wanted to become a teacher like his mother. Pedro later said that his mother was physically abusive and a sex worker. Some reports have stated that Pedro was kicked out of his house after inappropriately touching his sister, while other reports claim that he simply ran away. Pedro traveled to the capital of Colombia, where he eventually became homeless. While there, he joined a gang and smoked cocaine. While roaming the streets, a stranger offered Pedro a bed, but instead, they took him to an abandoned building and sexually assaulted him. When Pedro was just 10 years old, an elderly couple found him and gave him a home. They also enrolled him in a school for orphans. But while attending this school, he was sexually assaulted once again by a teacher, and then he ran away. At this time, he was just 12 years old. Pedro resorted to crime and was arrested at 18 for stealing a car. Soon after this, he was sexually assaulted by two men, and in retaliation, he killed both of them. It is unclear if he served any jail time for these murders. Upon his release, it is believed that Pedro started by seeking out indigenous and limited economic girls. He made his way to Peru, where he would lure his victims into remote areas, raping them and murdering them. Pedro admitted that he did this dozens of times during the mid to late 1970s. Pedro was later caught when he attempted to kidnap a 9-year-old. He was going to be submitted to tribal law when a Western missionary convinced tribal members to turn him over to the police, who then deported him back to Colombia. There, Pedro continued his murders and by the late 70s had made his way to Ecuador, where a number of girls instantly started to go missing. Families attempted to find the girls on their own by posting ads in the local newspaper. In 1980, a vendor by the name of Carolina Ramon and a group of her friends caught Pedro attempting to lure Carolina's daughter away from the busy market. Once they had Pedro in custody, he initially refused to talk, until a pastor went undercover as an inmate, gaining Pedro's trust. The pastor was able to get Pedro to confess as well as details of the murder and where the bodies might be. Police were able to find 57 bodies. With his confessions, as well as the bodies, he was charged with 110 murders, while he claimed to have been responsible for more than 200. On July 31st, 1981, a 33-year-old Pedro pled guilty to the killing of 57 girls and was imprisoned. While in prison, he was diagnosed as a sociopath. He was given the maximum sentence allowed in Ecuador at the time, which was 16 years. On August 31st, 1994, Pedro was released from prison after serving 14 years. He was then deported back to Colombia, where authorities attempted to convict him of a 20-year-old murder, but instead, Pedro declared insanity. In 1998, he was declared sane and released on a $50 bail. He visited his elderly mother and asked for his inheritance. After being informed that there were none, he sold her only bed and her only chair to the people on the street. Pedro then vanished and has never been seen again.